In this video, we're going to work with the user service class, and we're going to add get users implementation into it. So I will open my source packages and I'll go to user service interface first. And here I will need to add a new method, and that method will return a list of user DTO, and we called it get users, and it takes in two method arguments. First one is page and the second one is limit, and both are integer data types. Let's import list. Now we will need to add implementation of this get users into our user service implementation class. So I will open it and I will move mouse over and then add unimplemented methods to it. Scroll down to find it. Here it is. So let's define the return value quickly. Again, that's going to be list of user DTO return value equals new array list, and we will return this return value, and then let's format this code like this. The next step for us is, as usually, to use user repository and then get that list of users. And the good news is that Spring Data GPA provides us with implementation of that functionality. If we use user repository and hit dot, we can look through, and here we have find all and find all by ID. Some of the methods are already implemented. We can easily use find all, which will return an entire list of users from our database. But remember, we do not want to return entire list because that might be too many. We want to implement pagination and return a limited list of records for each request. And Spring Data GPA does provide us with this functionality, but for that we will need to make a little change to our user repository, and I will need to open it. Here's our user repository, and at this time it extends CRUD repository. So I'll need to use a different interface here, and that interface is called paging and sorting repository. And let me import it. Import paging and sorting repository from Spring Framework data repository. Here we go. And by making use of paging and sorting repository, we still keep our user repository working. The existing methods like find by email, find by user ID that we have implemented, these are our own implementation, will still work. And provided methods like save user or delete user will also still work. So as you can see, user repository save method is not underlined, there is no error. The functionality is still there, but now we can use a different find method from Spring Data GPA that accepts a different request parameter. Before we used to have find all, but now we have find all with pageable. So we will use that one, and we will provide a needed parameter shortly. So let's create that pageable first. So I'll add a new line, and I will create a pageable object. I'll call it pageable request equals page request, and now I will specify the page and the size of that page request. The page is page, we have this method argument, and size is our limit, like this. Let's import pageable. This pageable comes from Spring Framework data domain. I'll import that, and now when I have this pageable request, I can use it with find all method. There is another little difference with this find all method, is that it will not return a list of user entity, it will return a page of user entity, and I'll call it users page. And let's import page also from Spring Framework data domain. And to get a list of user entities, let's create a list of user entity. We'll call this users equals, we'll use users page, and we can get content from this, like this. And now we can loop through this list of users, which contains a list of user entity objects, to create a list of user DTOs. And I have a little code snippet ready for that for loop. So what we are doing here, we are going to loop through the list of users, and then for each user entity object, we're going to create a new user DTO, and then we're going to use binutils to copy properties from user entity object to user data transfer object. And then we are going to add this user data transfer object to our return value, and then return it back. And this is it. This is all we needed to do to add pagination support to our application. With Spring Data GPA, it's so much easy. All we needed to do is to make our user repository extend paging and sorting repository, and then use pageable and page request for our find all method to get that list of users. Now let's run this application to see how it works, and if something doesn't work, we will debug and fix it right away.